Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Flemington Lyceum Society. This is yet another lecture in our series. Um, Thanks for coming. It's nice to see some familiar faces, and some new faces, some folks I haven't seen, yet. So, we really hope you enjoy this. What this is at each lecture, I kind of introduce it. The concept is very, the first talk I gave is available on the borough's YouTube page. You can watch that one. And I basically gave a big history of this Lyceum movement, which had a home in Flemington Borough. And I think what's really unique about that is we call ourselves a historic borough of Flemington. And we take our history very seriously. And oftentimes we look at things like architecture, certainly the Lindbergh tribe, and all sorts of things that have emerged over time. A couple of summers ago, many people learned that we had a revolutionary soldier buried behind the Baptist church on Church Street, who served in the Revolutionary War and was an indentured African slave. And it was an amazing thing to learn. You can visit that, you can plaque there. That's
In my sweatshirt.
okay, very good. And you know, our executive director of the Flemington Improvement District was integral to a lot of that work and had a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. But it reminded me of a poem I once heard, which is often attributed to Harry Truman, which is the history that you didn't know about, you learn about is the best. Because you're like, wow, I didn't know that, which was my reaction when I found out that the old firehouse was an older building called the Flemington Lyceum. Then I said to myself, what's that? So I have to give a lot of credit to the Huntington Historical Society for just having all that information, having archives of things. I just went in there and I just did my research and dug into the history. It's absolutely fascinating. Read a book by probably the only book you can read about the Lyceum movement, which I had to track down at a used bookstore in Long Island. But it's just fascinating stuff. The history that you don't know was there, and the Lyceum is such, I think, an important thing to go back to. Here we are in the 21st century. Our lives are way different than they were in the early 1800s, when the Lyceum was really blowing up. And it came down from New England, and it spread across the country as best it could, and it reached our little borough here, which is totally cool. And people hung out, they talked, they learned. There's a whole thing. It's like, hey, let's enlighten one another. We got experts to come in, and they would talk. Sometimes they'd have debates over like essential questions, right? And it's just the spirit of that tied into really the Lyceum was about community. They really stress getting communities together. And I felt like when I learned about this, I said, what a perfect time in our world where we're reading about things like one of the second lectures, Alan Ruckel's talking about businesses in town, and they're very integral to civic life as entities in the town. And she touched on things that we hear about now, like people are too tied to their phones. There's a loneliness epidemic. There's mental health problems associated with this loneliness and detachment. And it amazes me that something so old, we can go back to that, because that's a way to kind of counter a lot of these things that are happening right now. So that's the spirit of it. That's why we're here. And I appreciate you all coming. And before I introduce our lecturer this evening, just so you know, format wise, this is going to be a little different than usual lectures. Usually we're up here talking, we have a Q&A session, and then we'll have a conversation. That's why you all have name tags. Refer to each other by first name, right? So you have a face to talk to, some ideas to engage with, and certainly anything that emerges, you're gonna learn some stuff tonight. I think you're gonna like what Robin has to say. But that's just gonna be the lecture. Robin's gonna take you guys on a tour of this robust, active. Incidentally, tonight, there's a lot going on here. And it's lots to do what she's gonna tell us about. I'm not gonna steal any more of her thunder. Robin Lapidus, it's all yours. Thanks for coming.
I am Robin Lapidus. I am from Maplewood, New Jersey. I grew up there. My parents were New Yorkers. They moved out to the country of Maplewood. And I went to Columbia High School. It's a long story, but somehow I wound up going to Harvard for a master's degree. in counseling and consulting psychology, which was in the education school. And I did some work in direct service, social service. My last job in social service was in a runaway shelter where the kids would drink tons and tons and tons and tons of soda. And we had cans and cans and cans stacked up against the walls. It was, I mean, it would have been great if we could have changed that, but we couldn't. And we wanted to recycle the cans. And the amount of bureaucracy that we had to go through just to recycle the cans, to give the kids a little bit of spending money was enough for me to say, I've found a better way. And I found that working in business associations, you're much more likely to be able to help other nonprofits and contribute to society and give people, when they're not happy, a beautiful day and a whole lot of good. And you also work closely with businesses, and most of them really want to do good in the world. So I left nonprofit work to work in geographically specific business associations, and I've done it for too many years to be able to tell you right now. I did spend about 25 years in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I worked in Harvard Square, running the business association. That is a very ancient place. I worked in Central Square, which is rich with development because MIT bought a ton of property and held a ton of property, and they wanted to make it a great space for students and learners and technology. And pretty much MIT has completely changed acres and acres of land with 75-year leases to research companies and pharmaceuticals, and they build whatever it is the community wants. So Google opened a huge facility in and around MIT, and on their roof, they had probably one of the most gorgeous gardens ever. And people were very concerned what would happen in 75 years when the lease was over. You know, and it's like 75 years is a very long time to enjoy one of the prettiest gardens that could be built in today's world. So when people are building spaces, there are many, many challenges, and what happens in the future should be one of our really good questions. So I'm here to talk about public spaces, shared places, and why where we gather matters. And I have grabbed some screenshots from some other folks who do this work all the time. And one of the better organizations is run by a gentleman who actually lives in Lambertville, and it's called the Project for Public Spaces. It is a brilliant organization and website, and they basically train communities and experts on how to do placemaking. So here, the really central question is, what if we build our communities around places? And I really want you to like let that one sink in, because when I first came here, I said to myself, where is that green space attached to the main street? Where is that town hall where they're having concerts when they don't have business, town business? You know, where do people run? How do I figure out how to get around? And why does the railroad track seem like it runs through everything? But nobody uses it, and in fact, it's probably like the scariest place to walk around town. So, you know, there's lots of questions. The really interesting question is, how are we thinking about making the spaces we desire? You know, are we working together? Are we talking to our mayor and council about what we desire? why do we wait for a developer to come to suddenly wake up and shake the dirt off, say, oh my God, we need this or that, we want this, we don't want that. So, my next screen is what placemaking is and what placemaking is not. So placemaking is visionary, adaptable, inclusive, context specific. You know, people are not just blue sky, and they're really digging into what you have and what you want, what you could have. It's dynamic, transdisciplinary, flexible, sociable. It is not top-down, reactionary, design-driven, a blanket solution, exclusionary, car-centric, one size fits all, discipline driven, dependent on regulatory controls, project focus, etc. And on this screen, I do have the citation because I did not come up with this list. But that's really a really good explanation of what placemaking is and how much fun it is. And I am going to, I'm gonna show you screens. I really put these in here for you to read later. But placemaking at its core is the process of creating public spaces that foster community connection and a sense of belonging. And that is really the question for you all to ask yourselves, where you have your business, where you have your house, on the streets you walk to. Do you feel a sense of connection? Do you feel safe? Do you have a sense of belonging? And what kind of things could we do to make those improvements? And what are you doing to get people together to try to ask for what we want, which we believe would be better? So again, vitality and gathering spaces are for diverse activities. It shouldn't be, that's a basketball court and that's all you get. Should have a sense of belonging, should lead to community engagement. And what I wanted to say is that I feel like we're talking about gathering as places that are automatic, like this space is clearly a gathering space, whether it's for the farmers market, which I have to say was the lifeblood of the community during the pandemic. It was a communication delivery system. It was a mail delivery system. It was a check-in with your neighbors. It was a check-in on, are we all gonna be okay? It was really amazing how much this room and that, every Saturday market held this community together. And this wheel is amazing. I'm gonna ask you to go look at it, but it talks about place in terms of sociability, and it talks about pride and neighborlyism and volunteerism, evening use, street life, social networks, number of women, children, and elderly. Property values, this is uses and activities, comfort and image, crime statistics, sanitation, access and linkages. So like, this is the most complete and fabulous wheel you could ever want to find to talk about placemaking. Next, I'm gonna move on to gathering matters in Flemington Borough. This absolutely stunning and exquisite woman is the violinist who's performing at the Central Jersey Jazz Festival. And just to put things in perspective, I wanted you to see the kind of gathering events that we have. Yeah, this isn't just let's go find a playful pause on the sidewalk where we can sit down and say hello to each other. These are really big gathering events. And my organization, the Flemington Improvement District, has created and produced them. So Corn, Tomato, and Beer is 10,000 attendees. 100 and Harvest Fest, 7. Central Jersey Jazz Fest, about 2,000. The first Flemington food truck, which we had as a pivot from not being able to have the Corn Tomato and Beer Festival. Crazily enough, had 3,000 people show up, and it was amazing. The cultural district events, you're here tonight at a monthly sip and stroll. I'm so honored that people chose us over or in addition to the 4-H festival. The fact that it's so busy out there is really hard, just fills my heart. The Halloween Kids Parade, the Witch Walk, 2,000 attendees, those are pretty decent events. The sing-along trolley with Mrs. Claus and Santa, we get hundreds, and those are the gathering events that I think people have come to know, love, count on, expect, and get kind of annoyed if they can't happen. The beauty of Flemington, in my eyes, is that we have 3 business areas. We have the historic Main Street District. We have the Snaggle Arts and Cultural District, and we have the Circle Shopping District, which is everything up at the highway. And very few places have something for everyone. You know, you don't have to go to Phillipsburg or Bridgewater to go to Home Goods. We have some big box stores here. You can buy a boat now, which I learned at our food truck festival. We had boats on display. It was pretty awesome. And this is our new signage. And our new signage will be directing people to these different business districts because we need to fully embrace and acknowledge that we have 3, and that actually that makes us a richer, better, more diverse community. And the food truck festival that we had at the shops was fantastic, and we basically introduced a lot of people who shop at the shops to the fact that there is a single road, there is a main street, they're not exactly. We talked to people who are not exactly coming here on a regular basis, they're just going along the highway, doing their thing, and they leave. So we really need to integrate and share customers. Okay. I am not gonna read this, but I do want you to know, you probably will see some brand names. This is called the Economics of Placemaking, Events, Sponsors, and Public and Private Partners. I had partnerships with Harvard, MIT, with Giorgio Armani, with MTV and HGTV, with Samsung. There's a whole chunk of banks, transportation, media, food products, and last but not least, a lot of alcohol. And alcohol, I got Tito's Vodka to give us $50,000 to open an LGBT center that did not exist in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And that was a straight up donation of $50,000. It was not, they didn't give us vodka to sell at an event. And it was really an honor to have them be a part of the Provincetown's growth, and they've actually stayed as a partner for like 10 years. But the reason I put this here is because it really does take a whole lot of money to do events. Corn Tomato and Beer is a $65,000 gathering. That's a lot of money. Very few nonprofits or cultural organizations can afford to do big events because they're really costly. Next slide is, I've also, in the economics of placemaking, been able to write grants and get grants and implement them. So since I've been here, we did get a $100,000 Opportunity Zone Challenge grant that was really meaningful. We've gotten the Department of Community Affairs Neighborhood Preservation Program grant. We've gotten money from the Hunterdon County Cultural Heritage Commission, the Tourism Association, and some of those other grants were from other places. Okay, again, these are events that I've created. And I'm really proud of these events. And some of them had 200,000 attendees. We did two huge events in Harvard Square, Mayfair and Oktoberfest. They were very similar. They were 200,000 people, and we did them twice a year, and I did that for 13 years. And when I saw the parade here, I said, this is a town that is so full of joy and magic and kids and the future and potential. I was really impressed by our holiday program and really wanted to come here. Here's more events and more other things. I did do the annual Provincetown Carnival Festival of Three. That's 100,000 people. It's actually took place today. I've done a global laser presentation that required FAA clearance because it was 21 military grade lasers. The woman who created this, it's a woman artist, saw a rainbow at Walden Pond and said, how can I create an art rainbow that mirrors the magic of this beautiful natural spectacle? And the closest she came up to being able to create something as majestic and safe was this military grade laser rainbow. It is magnificent and it's seen for 21 miles. So, you know, in terms of a gathering, we pretty much from Provincetown to Plymouth, which is kind of an interesting two places because the pilgrims really did stop in Provincetown and then go to Plymouth. But we covered the sky in a rainbow that everybody could see no matter where you were. And that was amazing. And it was truly a spectacle that really did unify people in a time that was a little stressful. This is my most favorite event that I ever did in my whole entire life. This right here is the steps of Harvard Yard. And we did the final Harry Potter book event. And we did such a good job that, like, that's the library back here. This is where they have 30,000 people for graduation. We had about 20,000 people. The police were not prepared to close Massachusetts Avenue, and they did. The businesses that I went into and said, hey, we're having a big event. You really want to make like butter, beer, candy, or whatever, just get Harry Potter. They were like, sure. The next day, no one had a bottle of water left by the end of the night. Like everybody, we had so many people who were so good and wanted to go and decorate shops that we basically made the town dry of any liquids. It was pretty cool. And what we had was 3 Wizard Rock bands, which is like kind of an NPR concept. So it's a bunch of kids who wrote songs based on Harry Potter. They didn't do covers, they didn't play anybody else's music, they only played their own songs that were relevant to the book. So in terms of organic material, like, you know, it couldn't have gotten more organic than this. And the headline was, Children, Witches Invade Harvard Square for Potter's Finale. This is Harvard Yard. This is the Christmas decoration that we have in nets on the street. And by the time we got all the permissions done, we didn't really have a decoration. So we asked our lighting guy if he could unfurl this giant thing that went in the street and put it on Memorial Church. And it made like the most magical event like ever, but it was just a happy accident. And Harvard originally said no, that we could not have this event there. They didn't think it was a good idea. It wasn't a good time. And I really wasn't going to take no for an answer. So I wrote a very impassioned letter about the fact that the first printer in America was a woman. She actually brought a printer like tied up in her skirts on a boat to New Amsterdam to be the printer of Harvard Square, well before America was America, well before there was a first American university, which is Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, many years later. And my letter said, if we can't celebrate the largest book printing in the world, in Harvard Garden, like, what are we doing here? And they said, yes. I think they figured at that point I was probably gonna write a letter to the editor or take it a step further. And the only thing I had to do was power wash the steps and reseed the grass, and we said, fine. But this was an incredible event. And in fact, we got international press, and it said, US Potter fans mob Harvard Yard for Wizard Rock. So that is a once in a lifetime kind of magical thing that happened, but I really see potential for that in every town I work in. I think that if, you know, if the right people come together with the right vision and the right idea and the right talent, like, you can do these really magical events that are just nights that everyone, remembers and are really important. Now I'm on themes. So seating is always a theme in placemaking. In Harvard Square, we had Beau Concept. I don't know if anybody remembers that store, Modern Furniture. And they said, we'd like to bring the world's largest sofa, which was like basically just 10 trucks full of this thing, this maroon sofa. And we'd like to put it together on the street. And we cleared it. We had an event that day, kind of like Corn Tomato Beer. It was 213 feet long, 2.17 tons, and it had 68 legs. And we put this thing out there having no idea what would happen. And you know what happened? People sat down and they talked to the person to their right, and then they talked to the person to their left. They wound up meeting cousins that they didn't know they had, a friend of a friend, somebody they were gonna stay in touch with, pen pals. It was amazing, but really, it just showed the power of just two chairs on a place where somebody feels safe enough. And some people took the safety of our couch a little too seriously, people fell asleep, they ate meals. But it was incredible. And I always think really carefully about including seating in our gathering spots. This guy was just the best, but basically he worked for one of the buildings at MIT, a bio research park, and he just drove these chairs and put them where I asked him to, kind of like George Eckelman. I'm kidding, George. But we have a bunch of chairs here and we do move them around, and that really is the best kind of seating to have, something that's mobile that you can move around. Flemington did this project before I got here, this Let's Sit Together. It was a great concept. It needed more thought about the future because the chairs weren't preserved well enough to last for as long as we want them to. We are about to replace this project with something else, and I really welcome the community to help us think about what we do next. All right, moving along. This is what a big event in Harvard Square looks like. This is Corn Man and Tomato Boy, who show up at every corn and tomato event that we do. And it's amazing that, like, we have such a great organic theme that is so true to us, to Flemington, to a place that's surrounded by 1,600 farms, that we have this kind of organic embracing of the event, that people actually come as costume superheroes. Food is another thing that just brings people together. So this was a dumpling event we had in Central Square in honor of Joyce Chen, the chef. The rules were every dumpling had to be $1. Every dumpling was multicultural. So if you were the Irish restaurant, they did like a crab rangoon, because a dumpling is a food type that is found in Jewish cooking and Indian cooking and in Chinese, Asian cooking. So We had multicultural dumplings. Everyone had to be dollar because we didn't want a barrier for the kid who was starving and really wanted to participate, or somebody who was on a fixed budget, and people came with containers. They bought like $20 and $30 worth of dumplings. We were so surprised by what happened. And as you can see, 1.3 thousand people went. I'm not sure how Facebook used to tell you how people went, but they did. And 7,000 people were interested. We are talking about doing street food events here, but clearly the people who eat our corn are just so happy at our events. We had the corn hub guy at the food truck festival, lines around the block. But, and you know, this really is our theme that we fully embrace. And I think we do a good job of it. So when we created the new materials for the food truck festival, we wanted to give a reference to the season, the growing season that we're in, which is corn and tomatoes. This line went like to here, and then the cousin's line went to like there. And the only complaint we had was that people said waiting an hour was a long time, but the food was good. You know, it was a mild complaint. This is what we're having tonight. The sip and strolls are a monthly event. This is the kind of event I really love to do, because as you can see, somebody has done, I didn't have to do, I'm here tonight because I didn't have to do much of anything. Everyone else has come up with a concept and they fully embraced it. Tonight the theme is Camp Flemington. We have Within Spirit, Charmed and Bound, our new romance bookstore, this crazily adorable 39.9 Parent Trap sale, a dino hunt, and stuff your tumblers. And the sip and stroll, thankfully the council, of which Jeremy Long and Tony Parker are leaders of, allowed us to have open container, because we have a brewery, we had wine here, and we were able to, without a lot of convincing, let them know that we felt that we could responsibly have adult beverages, and that people should be able to walk from one end of the street to the other. We don't have this on Main Street. We don't have to set the shops in Flemington. It is really unique to the Stangl Arts and Cultural District. And look how happy everybody is. And it's not because they're all drinking, I can tell you that, because a lot of people aren't drinking. And what's really important in this picture is that about 2 years ago, we named this area the Stangl Arts and Cultural District. We do not have a cultural district program in New Jersey. Massachusetts has one. If you have to apply, you have to have a bunch of things that we have, like a dance school and a 3D art school and STEM and innovation. Now we have benchmark woodworking. We have everything you could want to have in an arts and culture, a bookstore. A kiln, we're in an EMC craft making factory. So we just decided that we would call it the Stangl Arts and Cultural District, and we did go back and forth about the name. And we have kind of discussed having a broader boundary, because unfortunately, I think when we got the designation, we were a little timid, and it didn't include Volker and Church and Central Avenue, and it really should, because it really does hang together. This is probably the most believable thing about Flemington in many years, that we are an arts and cultural district. And to that end, we put, this is called the Gobo, we put it on our iconic kiln. This is an event that the cost of doing it is of some paper and some plastic. And it's called If This Building Could Talk. And I've said to the HPC and to other people in town, this is the easiest thing for us to do. And basically, people tell in their own handwriting the story of what they know about their building. You know, that when they moved in, the person who owned it or the realtor told them that way back when this was there or that happened. And it's really lovely way to make your buildings talk to the public. And that is something we need to do. And this is legitimately not green screen. There really is a, informational panel there in this spot. It looks like this. It came to us through the DAR, which was very, not exactly organic, but we got a call from, Mike got a call, I think, from some people saying, we're going to create this, Mike from Act Two Books, who's sitting behind us. We're gonna create this panel, would you sell books, could we do an event? It was a spectacular event. And it's an amazing story. And truly, Jacob Francis freed slave and the wife that he bought and married, and lived a beautiful life with in Flemington, lived like in a 3-block radius of Main Street. And it would be so nice to do an event where the buildings that they lived in actually talked about what their lived experience was. And that brings us back to what is important about where we gather in places and spaces. And again, it's about physical and social comfort. And the examples, Plaza Park, green spaces, community centers, public art installations, and even well-designed streets. We have a lot of work to do. How gathering places contribute to placemaking. They are community building. They create social interaction. They give economic vitality. They also offer cultural enrichment and an improved quality of life by creating spaces where people feel welcome, connected, engaged. Placemaking initiatives can improve the overall quality of life for residents. It is so important. I know you feel this in your own lives and when you walk around town, that you feel like, gee, I wish there was someplace just to sit and, you know, be with your thoughts or sit and talk to. The other night, there must have been two kids on a first date. I saw them sit in like 20 places. It was like they didn't want to say goodbye yet, and they were just kind of moving around. And it started with ice cream, and then they just kept moving around and I kept seeing them. And I thought, boy, you know, we could do better. Like, these kids need just a better place to sit than on a wooden bench that's been rotting outside for, 5 years. And it's probably my fault that it hasn't been moved someplace else. Okay, so what we did was we got a grant and we put together the Flemington South End Community Implementation Plan. This is all of us doing a walking SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in our yellow jackets. I see people in this room. We came up with, at the same time we did the Stantec Committee Action Report, top priorities. That was Opportunity Zone 2021, retail, walkability, authenticity, open space were deemed most important. So we have done the community surveys and the studies. And retail's a pretty big chunk there. Like unusually, the desire for great retail is a big chunk. Walkability and open space, also big chunks. And authenticity. Heritage, pretty tiny compared to other things. Okay, then we did some work. We actually had success. And also we had money to do these things. So this is the back of this property of all the way down to past DIY. It looked like this digger thing was here for a day. I mean, it was like cutting through jungle, mass of brush and stuff, and we got down to here. It was a huge improvement, and within like a week, we had the Hundred and Harvest Fest, and we had people sitting in that space. So we went from this to like people actually sitting in the space. And some art activities. We also looked at what we had community consensus about, and we had all of these points of pride where people felt positive about these things in Flemington, small town feel, historic architecture, walkability, local business, arts and culture, strong community. And then we had opportunities for improvement, more diverse shops and restaurants, more cultural destinations, improved walkability, enhanced cultural. It is so clear what people want. And then we did a little more improving. This is the groundhog kiln right outside of Humdo. And George Eckelman is an incredible community partner and basically cleaned all this up, rebuilt this whole structure so that it looks like this. He also ripped down an icky fence and created a gallery wall with these fabulous industrial armature to be able to hang our first show, which was Dave Norton's photographs of Flemington. And this show was called Flemington from Dusk Till Dawn. And all of our shows have been artwork about Flemington or people who work in Flemington. Over here, this is mine. This killed me. When I got here and I smelled the chlorine. The chlorine in front of what was Humdo and 39 Mine. This is what it looked like on an average day in Flemington on Stable Road 4 years ago, I'm not sure. And from there, we got to here and this incredibly beautiful store. So it is so possible. We are so good at this. George Eckelman, again, my landlord, and not saying that to my landlord, but you know, this building that we're sitting in and all the buildings along this way really are the heart of this art center, of this arts and cultural district. And we've made incredible improvements with some sweat equity and time. This is the next frontier. Here's the scary railroad that helped me figure out where I was when I first moved here. This is a engineering study that boldly takes Church Street across Stengel Road. And moves a railroad crossing, and it all is necessary and makes sense because with Liberty Village being a housing development, you can't really have a train that steams and smokes and runs bells and whistles and sits there for 20 minutes. It has to move. And it gives us an opportunity to really rethink how we do the track. Can we have a walking path? Can we have a cultural heritage trail that tells everyone about our history? Can this be a beautiful space that connects Main Street to Stengel? So we're working on it. Running to the end here. These are things that I think are important. I think you have to show that your spaces are cared for and you have to let them speak to the street. And that means for a very historic town, we have very few interpretive panels or things that tell you about our history. I think seating is an essential requirement of civic life. Food and music are universal. Costumes and creativity. There are people in gold costumes running around. I don't know if you've seen them. I'm not hallucinating, but they're I think you have to remove barriers to public spaces and events. The best events are like that food truck festival, because we had the right amount of space. We spent the appropriate amount of money to have the right amount of police and services. but it wasn't $65,000, and the return on the investment was phenomenal, you know? And we could pick that up and move it to other safe places. We are moving many events from Stangle Road to Main Street. That requires a lot of work. But I also hope that when we do that, that we get the right scale of event, that it's sustainable, affordable, community oriented, and really fits into the Main Street area. This is my invitation to you to be part of the art. And tonight you are, I mean, anybody who comes to the Civic Control really is part of the art, because it's the fact that we have people here in community just gathering that makes such a difference. This is me and my female, board members of the Flemington Improvement District. We are on the roof of the courthouse, square residences. This is, the, corner building behind us. And it is coming soon to our historic Main Street. The Flemisance is real. This is Jane Jacobs. She is the famous mother of architecture and placemaking for people. And as she said, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. And that is really the thing, you know. I went to an event for young people, college students, and basically they were like, okay, everybody take a map. Where are you gonna put the hospital? Where are you gonna put the track? Where are you gonna put the pollutants that are come down the river? Where are you gonna put the houses? And it was hard work to try to figure out how to do all that stuff. But the one thing everybody walked away with was we make cities, we make communities, we make the places we live. It's not, you know, it's not Hunter Healthcare that's telling us how things should be here, or the government. We are the government. We are very well represented. We have 3 representatives in this room from our council. We should be talking to each other about what we want. Where is the wish list? To me, not having a public space attached to the Main Street just means that we're not a fully thriving place, because spending $65,000 to do an event on Stangle Road is not the solution. Having a space where we can gather and have events that won't cost us that kind of money because it's already built for those needs is really all equally as important. And we can do both. We can have events at the shops in Flemington, the Circle Shopping District. We can have events on Main Street, and we can have events on Stangle. But we really have to think about how we develop these spaces. And that is it. I'm saying thank you for attending. We can get up and walk a little bit. And if people have to leave, I know we've talked for a long time. And that's it.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much. Before we get to the walk around here, see all this wonderful stuff. If anybody had any questions for Ms. Lapidus regarding anything you talked about, project things, sharing with, or just your own curiosity about any of this place statement, you know, or anything related to. Anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question, but something I'd share. I was up in the Fisher Lakes a couple weeks ago in Geneva. And I think there's something very simple, cheap, and very beneficial, which we might want to consider for Flemington. They had blue and red reversible flags for open and closed that were posted on their front. So when you drove down, you knew exactly which stores were open. You have to go and spin if the lights are on or if it's what their hours are.
That's a fabulous thing.
It was fantastic. I think this is so brilliant. And I think Flemington could the shops would love something like that, so people know that they're
We
actually.
absolutely need a tool to know what's open and closed.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Usually-
I've never heard that.
That's.
Actually, a couple of weeks ago, Chris Patel, the architect, is at the pottery studio very often, stopped me and he said, I was in a town and they have these buckets of chalk that say, please use this chalk. So we put a couple out, we're going through chalk like crazy, and it's so good. So, I'm completely open to any of those suggestions, and those are such small things, but they make such a huge difference. So please feel free to reach out to us and give us ideas.
Yeah, and comments, any other comments or questions? Yeah, go.
Chair refurbishing.
Yes.
Are you refurbishing chairs or going in a different direction?
Our chairs have been inspected by somebody who knows chairs and wood, and they're really not, we can put them back together and they're gonna fall apart again. They're just not, they weren't properly prepared for what happened to them, which is sad. I mean, again, we've had them for 6-7 years. But we have to start over with something else, and our board discussed it. Council President Parker is our liaison, and we decided to kind of clean up Main Street of the things that have been hanging on for a long time. And then let the hotel finish and really take a look and say, are these wooden Adirondack chairs the answer, or is there a different treatment that might be more appropriate as Main Street changes and develops? So we will get something, and I suggest we spend money to get something that'll last.
Excellent. All right, well, listen, I think, if we're ready to go, unfortunately for those playing at home, we're not gonna be able to take them. But, listen, I appreciate everybody coming, certainly come along, and Robin's gonna educate you on some really interesting things. Thank you.
Yeah. You stay here.
Okay.
I'm coming, yeah. Yep.
That's next grade and, here.